Good evening, everyone. Today is Sunday, May 17th. May 17th. And last night I told you that I would come back today and go over the Stoughton Police Department Internal Affairs investigation. So that's what we're going to do. It's the investigation that the FBI ordered case. So buckle up. It's going to be a wild ride. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with the Sandra Birchmore case, Sandra Birchmore was I believe, 23-year-old young lady who was found unalive in her apartment. She was, I believe, 8 months pregnant. She was preparing to have her baby. She was setting up photo shoots, maternity photo shoots. She was setting up crib. She was, baby clothes shopping. Everything that you would do if you weren't intending on unaliving yourself. And yet the Stoughton police would have you believe that that's exactly what happened. And it was very suspicious. Apparently, she joined the STARS. I believe it's the STARS program. As a 12-year-old girl, she was interested in becoming a police officer, so she became not an understudy, but when they volunteer and they ride around and they do volunteer work for the police department. And she was taken under the wing of a group of police officers who ran this program, and they basically groomed her and essayed her from the time she was 13 till the time that she passed. They passed her around like a piece of meat. They were two twin brothers, the Farwell brothers. And I believe the captain of the program. And apparently, Farwell thought that the baby was his. I don't know if she told him that the baby was his or how that worked out, but he was married and his wife was actually in labor the night that they suspect that she died. And there is videotape of Matthew Farwell entering her apartment building. He's got a mask on. There's a snowstorm outside, so he's all bundled up and you can't really see his face or anything. But it's pretty obvious that it's him. And he is the last one to have seen her alive. She was found with a ligature around her neck hanging from her closet door handle. I got to tell you that it's hard enough to unalive yourself and fight the urge and fight the natural reaction that your body has to, remove whatever it is that's causing you to not breathe or choke. your body just goes into the fight or flight mode, and it will automatically start struggling and start trying to breathe, you know. So for her to just sit down with a ligature around her neck and just hang from the doorknob and not have that happen and not have any kind of sign of a struggle, because, you know, she would be struggling at that point, is very suspicious. But Lieutenant Fanning, and we all know him from the Karen Reed trial. He was the state trooper who, for some reason, took the role of the courthouse deputy that kept an eye on the jury for the Karen Reed trial. You know, why somebody with that status would opt to do that job, nobody knows, but that was a bit suspicious. Anyway, he interviewed Matthew Farwell in his police cruiser in the parking lot of a restaurant or whatever, and basically asked him, hey, do you know anything about this? Matthew Farwell said no, and that was it. That was the extent of the investigation into Matthew Farwell. They checked his phones, they checked her phone, and said that they could find no communications between Sandra Birchmore and Matthew Farwell. And yet, as a result of the FBI investigation, they found, I believe it was something like 3,000 text messages between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore. So obviously there was some tainted investigating going on. Anyway, to make a long story short, it was determined that she unalived herself, and that's how the ME categorized her death. Since then, though, the ME has changed her cause of death to unknown, and I think that it's obvious that that was probably most likely as a result of the internal affairs and the FBI investigation. The family paid for a private autopsy, and Michael Baden, world-renowned medical examiner, is the one who performed the autopsy, and he said that you don't break your hyoid bone committing suicide. That only happens when you are strangled. And she had a broken hyoid bone. So how the Stoughton or Norfolk County medical examiner missed that, I don't know. I don't know if it's poor workmanship, or if she didn't know what she was doing, or if she was coerced into the result that she ended up filing. Because we all know that Michael Proctor attempted to influence the medical examiner in the Karen Reed and John O'Keefe case. They tried to make her say that it was due to being hit by, his cause of death was due to being hit by a car, and she wouldn't do it. And he had a few choice words to say about her through text messages, just like he did about Karen. And all that came out during Karen Reed's trial. So, anyway, they did an internal investigation into the Stoughton Police Department, and that's what I wanted to go over tonight with you. Seen as though Matthew Farwell just was denied bail, and he was also denied a change of venue. He's really working hard at trying to get out of there, but I don't foresee it happening. I think he's going to be in there for a very, 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 very long time. I'm not sure when his trial's supposed to start. I believe it's sometime later this year. But federal cases are not streamed, so we will not be able to watch that. But I will stay apprised of the daily updates, and then I will proceed to bring them to you. So, without further ado, let's get to it, shall we? Okay, let me find. Sorry. I had it here and then. Nope. I guess this is the best it's going to look. Ooh, that's big. Okay. Town of Stoughton Police Department, Chief McNamara, Deputy. It's to Chief McNamara from Deputy Chief Holmes. This was February 8th, 2021. It was completed and submitted on August 29th, 2022. Chief McNamara, pursuant to your directive of February 5th, 2021, to conduct this investigation, I hereby submit the following report into the matter of the unattended death of Sandra Birchmore and into the possible violations of policies, procedure, rules, and regulations of the Stoughton Police Department. Okay, let me see. I guess it doesn't let you do highlighting on this one, which is fine, I think. All right, investigative directive. This administrative investigation was conducted to determine any violations of policies, procedures, rules, and regulations of the Stoughton Police Department by any of its employees. This investigation began as a result of the unattended death investigation that was conducted by the Massachusetts State Police into the death of Sandra Birchmore of Canton, Massachusetts, formerly of Stoughton, Massachusetts, and a former participant in the Stoughton Police Explorers program. Sorry, it's not the STARS program. Investigative reports and evidence in this case was shared by the Massachusetts State Police concerning personal relationships that members of the Stoughton Police Department had with Miss Birchmore. Throughout the course of this of this investigation, there was an understanding between the Massachusetts State Police and me that should any evidence be discovered concerning criminal culpability involving anybody connected in any way to this case, that I would refer that information to the MSP for further investigation. Per policy, the Chief of Police received weekly updates as to the progress of this investigation, and on occasion with more frequency when relevant. A determination was made in the early stages of this investigation that disclosure of allegations to employees who would eventually be identified would jeopardize this investigation. So basically, they weren't going to give the employees that they believe were involved in Sandra Birchmore's, with Sandra Birchmore on an unprofessional level, they weren't going to give them a heads up because they were afraid that that would jeopardize the investigation, because these guys, you know, they have their hands in everything, and they would just be able to get rid of evidence, or, you know, work it to where it pointed at someone else, you know. I mean, it's insane. Let me first show you some pictures of these men, okay? So that you know who we're dealing with here. Now, the Farwell brothers are twins. And let me see if I can find a picture of all three of the men that were passing her around like their toy. Okay? I mean, it's disgusting. So this is Matthew Farwell. Great. Can't I just see the picture? This is Sandra Birchmore, beautiful young lady. And this is Matthew Farwell and his twin brother. And they were both inappropriately having inappropriate relations with Sandra Birchmore when she was, from the time she was 13, I believe, until she was found unalive. So there's that. There was also another man, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I believe he was a captain, or he is the captain now. These are all, okay, this is all three of them. Come on. Okay. That doesn't show their picture. Okay. This is the other man who was having inappropriate relations with Sandra Birchmore. So this is the third man. and that's Sandra Birchmore. So, and I don't think he's been brought up. I don't think he or the twin brother of Matthew Farwell have been brought up on charges, which I don't understand, because even if they weren't involved in her death, they were having inappropriate relations with a minor. So, on the job, no less. They were, on the clock, and they were either in their car with her, or when she was older and had her own apartment, they would go to her apartment, and they would just take turns with her. It's disgusting. It's definitely should be addressed, and I don't think that they should get off scot-free. I mean, they may not have been involved with her death, but they still broke the law. It's still rape, right? I mean, she's 12, 13 years old. So that's who we're dealing with in this case. Per policy, the chief of police received I read that part already. Okay. An approximate timetable was provided and updated as information developed. Some delays in the processing of data were beyond the control of this investigator. Any dispositions or findings are based upon the preponderance of evidence standard of proof. Introduction and background. On February 4th, 2021, the Canton Police Department responded to a sudden death, Exhibit 1. The call originated as a well-being check from, and it's redacted, the employer of the victim, Sandra Birchmore. The call came here to the Stoughton Police Department as Birchmore's address of record was 40 Holbrook Avenue in Stoughton. Further communication directed that the Canton Police do the well-being check at 3307 Windsor Woods Way, as Birchmore had moved there. Reportedly, Birchmore had not reported to work in several days. The victim, Miss Birchmore, was pronounced deceased at the scene by a Canton paramedic. She died from, and it's redacted, and tells you to look at these exhibits, and subsequent MSP interviews. On or about February 5th, 2022, you were contacted by a detective from the MSP Detective Unit that is assigned to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, and that is Michael Morrissey's office. Surprise, surprise. And he has still not brought murder charges against Matthew Farwell, even though, and that's why the FBI had to charge him with the murder. And they were able to do that because they consider Sandra Birchmore a witness in the SA and grape case against him. And it's a federal offense to unalive a witness. So that's how they were able to charge him with murder. But Morrissey still hasn't charged him on the state level, even with all this evidence that's been coming out. Okay, so you were contacted by a detective from the MSP Detective Unit that is assigned to the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office. The nature of the call was to notify you that a former member of the Stoughton Police Explorers Program, the program now terminated as of 2016, of this department had, redacted, the trooper had, Police Explorers Program of this department had, and I'm sure that says passed away or died or whatever. The trooper related that the former police explorer and victim, Sandra Birchmore, had been in an, I'm sure, sexual relationship with Detective Matthew Farwell for an extended period of time. He indicated that on the day Miss Birchmore passed, other troopers and the Canton Police Department responded as they ordinarily would to any unattended death. The MSP had been contacted by friends and family of the victim, Miss Birchmore, alerting the detective unit to the relationship between Matthew Farwell and Birchmore. See exhibits S1 through S24. It was further relayed that the Massachusetts Medical Examiner's Office took jurisdiction of the body and later confirmed that the victim, Miss Birchmore, and it's redacted. The preliminary investigative information showed Detective Farwell on the video surveillance of Miss Birchmore's apartment approximately 4 days before she was discovered deceased. Farwell spent about 20 minutes inside the apartment. Further investigation by MSP indicated that Farwell had known the victim, Miss Birchmore, since she was approximately 13 years of age and began a sexual relationship with her at age 15. Text messaging developed from the MSP investigation indicated that Farwell had, redacted, with Sandra Birchmore when she was age 15, and that Farwell, and it's redacted. The substance of the conversation shows that Farwell corroborates this action. The investigation by the Massachusetts State Police did not yield sufficient probable cause with which to charge Matthew Farwell with the crime at that time. After discussion with you, me and the appointing authority, a decision was made to place Matthew Farwell on paid administrative leave given the nature of what was known at that point in time. Ultimately, the MSP investigation would determine through the Office of the Chief ME that the cause of death of the victim, Sandra Birchmore, and it's redacted, I'm sure it says self-inflicted. Analysis of the victim's communications shows extensive dialogue between herself and Matthew Farwell when Matthew Farwell told her that he had arrived at her apartment and she told him to come up. Matthew Farwell was the last known person to see Sandra Birchmore alive. Given the volume of data, the town authorized the assistance of outside investigators. PI Paul Italian was initially brought in to assist, and we would later bring PI Robert Fries and Michael Bates as an IT consultant. All investigators are retired ranking members of the MSP with extensive investigative experience. Much of the initial investigative steps were centered on a PDF document that contained a download of data from the victim, Sandra Birchmore's laptop. The laptop had been synchronized with her cell phones. A later analysis of the cell phones provided a data pool that was less cumbersome and easier to identify users and people with whom the victim, Sandra Birchmore, was having discussions. Data was provided to me in Cellbrite format for easier and more organized analysis. Which is funny because, they were saying in the Karen retrial that Cellbrite wasn't dependable. So now they're depending on it. It just, whatever fits their narrative is what they use. It just blows me away. The investigation would later show that Matthew Farwell had a long-standing, redacted, with the victim Sandra Birchmore, and that his twin brother, Officer William Farwell, had a relationship with the victim Sandra Birchmore. The investigation also determined by a preponderance of the evidence that Officer Robert Devine had a relationship with victim Sandra Birchmore. That's the non-brother that I showed you a picture of. The investigation shows evidence that redacted behavior took place between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore, and that Robert Devine was engaged, redacted, of Matthew Farwell and William Farwell as his understudies. Contact was made with some participants of the former Stoughton Police Department Police Explorers Program to determine if any inappropriate behaviors, actions, or redacted took place beyond what was made apparent through evidence initially obtained. We also interviewed department members and a family member of Sandra Birchmore. Notwithstanding the resignation of any prospective targets of this investigation, interviews were drafted and strategically planned. To the furthest extent possible, we exhausted all investigated resources. The investigation represents a crossroads between the statutory authorized investigative authority of the MSP detectives assigned to the Norfolk County DA's office and the appropriate sharing of information in order to carry out a comprehensive administrative investigation. At a point early in this investigation, there was an understanding that the MSP still maintains primary jurisdiction over any criminal activity that the administrative investigation could reveal. So it's still going to ultimately be up to Morrissey's office whether or not they decide to charge these officers with any crimes. Whether there's evidence brought to them or not, it's still going to be their choice. To that extent, the understanding was that if I found evidence of a crime, I would stop the administrative process and refer this case, as well as all evidence, back to the MSP, which I think is a big mistake. That's how we got here, right? One witness came forward alleging that, redacted, Matthew Farwell. This matter was referred back to the MSP, and the victim in that case did not cooperate with the interview process. See the executive summary below. I conducted a review of the administrative investigation of Robert Devine that was conducted by investigator Paul White. I reviewed the findings as well as the entire case file. I conducted personnel file reviews of, redacted, Matthew Farwell and William Farwell. Several civilian witness interviews were conducted. A conclusion of fact is detailed below. Okay, so this is your executive summary. Matthew Farwell is the first one they go over. Matthew Farwell has been a sworn member of the Stoughton Police Department from March 27th, 2012 until the date of his resignation on April 1, 2022. He was a member of the Stoughton Police Explorers Group during his teenage years and had been designated the rank of deputy chief within the program in 2002. After high school, he entered the military and later acted as a guest instructor within the Explorers program at the request or direction of Robert Devine. Sandra Birchmore was a member of the Stoughton Police Explorers Group beginning in 2010 when she was 13 years old. She was on the standby list for the program in 2010, was a member in 2011, and remained in the program until 2016, the year she graduated from Stoughton High School. Sandra Birchmore was found deceased at her apartment in Canton on February 4th, 2021, after a well-being check when she didn't report to work. The Norfolk County District Attorney's Office conducted an investigation, and it was determined the manner of her death, and then it's redacted. I'm sure that it says was, self-inflicted. Just one second. Okay. On February 6, 2021, Matthew Farwell was interviewed by the MSP as part of the Sandra Birchmore death investigation. During the interview, Matthew Farwell stated that he knew Sandra, quote, for about 10 years, end quote, and they met when she was in the Explorer program of the Stoughton Police Department. He knew that she had previously, and then it's redacted. Matthew Farwell stated to the state police that he began redacted relationship with Sandra Birchmore early in 2020. He admitted they, redacted, in December 2020, Sandra told him, and it's redacted. He stated he last saw her on the evening of February 1st, 2021, when he went to her apartment to end their relationship. They had a quote unquote pretty nasty argument, and he left there at approximately 9:30 p.m. During the state police investigation into Birchmore's death, there was an analysis of her devices, cell phone, laptop, etc., and social media platforms. This part of the investigation revealed that Matthew Farwell was in contact with Birchmore by text message going back to at least 2020. During many of their text communications, the topic of discussion were blank. And it did come out that they had some very risque text message conversations that went back and forth. There had been hundreds of text messages between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore that had been reviewed as part of this investigation. Of note, there was a text message exchange between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore on February 11, 2020. Specifically, the content of one text message, and it gives you the exhibit, marked M. Farwell text, refers to the date of, redacted. M. Farwell text number 6 indicates that Matthew Farwell, redacted. Within the narrative of text number 6, Matthew Farwell acknowledged that, and that's also redacted. In another text dated February 11, 2020, Birchmore says, and it's redacted. Matthew Farwell replied, redacted. This text message is marked M. Farwell text number 6. In the following text, Birchmore cites the date and added, redacted, Farwell replied with a smiley face and then, quote unquote, me too. This text is marked M. Farwell text number 7. On the same date, Sandra Birchmore texted, redacted, and Matthew Farwell replied, redacted. In another text message between Ms. Farwell and Sandra Birchmore, Birchmore says, redacted, to which Farwell replied, quote unquote, me too. This text message was on June 19, 2020, and is marked M. Farwell text 3. The investigation has determined that Sandra Birchmore's date of birth was May 13, 1997, and that she was 15 years old on April 10, 2013. For the full context of the text messages, see Exhibit 2, text messages 1 through 7, 14, and 15. Matthew Farwell resigned from his position with the Stoughton Police Department on March 11, 2022, with the resignation to take effect on April 1, 2022. He resisted sitting for an interview in this investigation. The investigation has determined that Matthew Farwell violated Stoughton Police Department rules and regulations as listed below. Findings. Regarding the allegation that Officer Matthew Farwell demonstrated conduct unbecoming an officer in violation of Section 1 of the Stoughton Police Department rules and regulations, this allegation is sustained. Matthew Farwell demonstrated immoral, improper, disorderly, or intemperate, personal conduct that reflects discredit upon the officer himself, upon his fellow officers, or upon the Stoughton Police Department. The investigation has revealed that Matthew Farwell redacted relationship with Sandra Birchmore when she was 15 years of age. The relationship continued for many years and included interactions and communications while Farwell was on duty for the Stoughton Police Department. Regarding the allegation that Farwell violated Section 1 of the Stoughton Police Department rules and regulations, conformance to laws, this allegation is not sustained. There is insufficient evidence to prove or disprove this allegation. On the dates of February 11, 2020 and June 19, 2020, Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore engaged in text messaging in which they discussed the date of redacted. The content of the text messages indicate that Farwell and Birchmore, and that's also redacted. Matthew Farwell was a sworn member of the Stoughton Police Department on this date. In order to have a sustained finding of this allegation, investigators would need the testimony of Sandra Birchmore, who is deceased. Well, isn't that convenient? Regarding the allegation that Matthew Farwell demonstrated incompetence when he failed to demonstrate sound judgment in violation of Section 3 of the Stoughton Police Department rules and regulations, this allegation is sustained. On the date of June 7th, 2020, Matthew Farwell failed to demonstrate sound judgment when he engaged in texting with Sandra Birchmore while on duty for the Stoughton Police Department. The content of the text messages was that he requested Birchmore to meet him on Walnut Street while he was on duty, because he used to have her meet him, and they would have relations in his cruiser while he was on the clock. Regarding the allegation that Officer Matthew Farwell was untruthful in violation of Section 4 of the Stoughton Police Department rules and regulations, this allegation is sustained. On February 6, 2021, Farwell was interviewed by the MSP regarding the death of Sandra Birchmore. During the interview, Farwell admitted to, it's redacted. A review of the text messages between Farwell and Sandra Birchmore shows that he was not truthful in describing the extent of their relationship, I'm sure that says. Regarding the allegation that Farwell failed in his attention and devotion to duty in violation of Section 7, this allegation is sustained. On the dates of June 7, 2020, Matthew Farwell failed in his attention and devotion to duty when he engaged in texting with Sandra Birchmore while on duty for the Stoughton Police Department. The content of the text messages was that he requested Birchmore to meet him on Walnut Street. William Farwell had been a sworn member of the Stoughton. Now, this is his twin brother. William Farwell had been a sworn member of the Stoughton Police Department since March 21, 2017, until the date of his resignation from the department, August 1, 2022. He was a member of the Stoughton Police Explorers Group during his teenage years and had been designated the rank of lieutenant within the program in 2002. After high school, he entered the military and later acted as a guest instructor within the Explorers program at the request or direction of Robert Devine. Sandra Birchmore was a member of the Stoughton Police Explorers Group beginning in 2010 when she was 13. She was on the standby list for the program in 2010, was a member in 2011, and remained in the program until 2016. And that's all repeated from before. On February 11, 2021, William Farwell was interviewed by the Massachusetts State Police as part of Sandra Birchmore's death investigation. During the interview, William Farwell stated that he first met Sandra about 10 years earlier when she was in the Explorer program and he was a guest instructor. In 2018, while he was assigned to a paid detail, Sandra approached him and they began to talk about her interest in joining the Army. Farwell put her in touch with an Army recruiter, and Sandra began to contact him on a regular basis. William Farwell admitted during his state police interview that he had a redacted with Sandra going back about 2 years. The relationship ended when Sandra approached him and his family at a 4th of July event. After she approached his family, Farwell blocked her on social media, but they stayed in touch off and on. During the state police investigation into Birchmore's death, there was an analysis of her devices and social media platforms. This part of the investigation revealed that William Farwell was in contact with Birchmore by text message going back to at least 2020. And then it says that some of the content from his communications with her encouraged her to do something, but it's redacted. I'm not sure what that is. There's information in some text messages that Farwell is either working a shift or paid detail while he's exchanging blank text messages with Birchmore. The dates and times of these text messages were compared to attendance and paid detail records and revealed the following. April 19, 2020, William Farwell was assigned to a midnight to 8 patrol shift and exchanged text messages with Sandra Birchmore, which redacted. The messages began at 6:47 a.m. and continued past his 8 a.m. end of shift time. April 29, 2020, William Farwell was assigned to a midnight to 8 shift as the desk officer. He exchanged text messages with Sandra Birchmore. The text messages began at 4:39 a.m. and continued past his 8 a.m. end of shift. April 29, 2020, William Farwell was assigned to a paid detail from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Text messages, which began during his midnight shift, continued throughout the time he worked the detail. May 6, 2020, William Farwell was assigned to a midnight to 8 patrol shift and exchanged text messages with Sandra Birchmore. The messages began at 6:42 a.m. and continued until 7:25 a.m. December 21, 2020, William Farwell was assigned to a paid detail from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. He exchanged messages with Sandra Birchmore. The text messages occurred throughout the morning hours and continued until 1:49 p.m. At 11:04 a.m., Birchmore and Farwell, and it's redacted. At 11:38 a.m., Farwell sent Birchmore, it's redacted. Regarding the allegation that Officer William Farwell demonstrated conduct unbecoming an officer in violation of Section 1 is sustained. On the dates of April 19, 2020, twice on April 29th, work shift, and later on a paid detail, May 6, 2020 and December 21, 2020, William Farwell demonstrated immoral, improper, disorderly, or intemperate personal conduct that reflects discredit upon the officer himself, upon his fellow officers, or upon the SPD. On the above dates, William Farwell, while on duty, exchanged, redacted, with Sandra Birchmore. Regarding the allegation that William Farwell violated Section 1 of the Stoughton Police Department, allegation is sustained. On these same dates, April 19th, April 29th, August 1, August 16th, August 19th, September 15th, September 17th, September 26th, 2020, and October 19th, November 18th, and December 21st of 2020, William Farwell coerced Sandra Birchmore via text message, and it's redacted. On the dates of April 29th, August 1, August 16th, 19th, September 15th, 17th, 26th, October 19th, November 18th, and December 21, William Farwell coerced Sandra Birchmore via text message, and it's redacted. Regarding the allegation that Officer William Farwell demonstrated incompetence when he failed to demonstrate sound judgment, this allegation is sustained. On dates April 19th, April 29th, May 6th, December 21, 2020, William Farwell failed to demonstrate sound judgment when he engaged in texting with Sandra Birchmore while on duty for the Stoughton Police Department. Regarding the allegation that he was untruthful, this allegation is sustained. On February 11th, 2021, William Farwell was interviewed by the MSP regarding the death of Sandra Birchmore. During the interview, Farwell admitted to redacted. A review of the text messages between Farwell and Birchmore shows that he was not truthful in describing redacted. He stated during the interview that he last saw Sandra Birchmore during December 2020. The text message exchange indicates redacted in the parking lot of her apartment building after midnight on January 10th, 2021. Regarding the allegation that he failed in his attention and devotion to duty, this allegation is sustained. On the dates of April 19th, April 29th, May 6th, December 21, Farwell failed in his attention and devotion to duty when he engaged in texting with Sandra Birchmore while on duty for the SPD. Regarding the allegation that he violated the CJIS, LEAPS, NCIC data entry policy of the SPD, as well as a CJIS individual user agreement, this allegation is sustained. On the dates of October 10th, 2019, November 4th, 2019, William Farwell conducted a CJIS query of Sandra Birchmore on a Stoughton Police Department computer. This was not associated with any type of official police business. Just 1 second. So it actually seems like William Farwell was had more sustainments, whatever, had more of his accusations sustained than Matthew Farwell. So I'm wondering why, because I think Matthew Farwell's the one with the longer lasting relationship with her, and he's obviously the one that is being accused of taking her life. So I'm not sure why William Farwell is got so many more sustained allegations, but I guess it doesn't matter. But are they going to follow through with any of them? It doesn't sound like it, to be honest with you. And I just lost my place, so let me go back. Why is this not... Okay, let's try this again. Okay. Regarding the allegation that Officer William Farwell violated these same data entry policies of the SPD, as well as the SJ or CJIS individual user agreement, this allegation department rules and regulations is sustained. William Farwell conducted CJIS queries on himself on 24-hour occasions using an SPD computer. This query was not associated with any type of official police business. The dates on which he conducted these queries are as follows, and it gives all the dates. Man, that's a lot of them. Wow. What is CJIS? Let's look that up real fast. CJIS queries are official standardized requests made by law enforcement and criminal justice agencies to search local, state, and federal databases such as the FBI's NCIC and state DOJ systems for actionable intelligence. So he was trying to see if they were watching him. Is that what he was trying to see? Huh. Huh. Interesting. Okay. Robert Devine was a sworn member of the Stoughton Police Department from October 4, 1999 until his resignation on August 16, 2022. He was the designated officer in charge of the Stoughton Police Explorers program from the years 2002 to 2014. Sandra Birchmore, and then it says the same thing as it said in the other two. Um, um, During the investigation, during the data analysis part of the investigation into her death, it was revealed that Sandra Birchmore had sent text messages to William Farwell informing him that redacted Robert Devine. She also sent William Farwell redacted, and then see Exhibit 13. The investigation later revealed there was direct contact between Devine and Birchmore by Facebook Messenger between November 27, 2020 and February 1, 2022. During some of their Facebook Messenger communications, the nature of the conversation was that Devine and Birchmore redacted. There was also at least one instance where they met when Devine was on duty. Marty Riggs message exchange exhibit. Regarding the allegation that Officer Devine demonstrated incompetence when he failed to demonstrate sound judgment in violation of Section 3 is sustained. On the date of December 21, 2020, Robert Devine failed to demonstrate sound judgment when he engaged in Facebook Messenger communications with Sandra Birchmore while on duty for the Stoughton Police Department. The content of the text messages was that he requested Birchmore to meet him at the Chateau restaurant. Redacted. Regarding the allegation that Robert Devine was untruthful is sustained. On April 8, 2022, Robert Devine was interviewed by Paul L'Italian and Robert Fries at the MPTC Training Academy in Randolph. They acted as delegates from the Chief of Police, Donna McNamara, during this interview. During the interview, Devine continually denied that he had any type of contact or relationship with Sandra Birchmore. When informed that at that stage of the investigation, we hadn't found any direct communication between Devine and Birchmore, he replied, quote, "because you won't find it," end quote. regarding the allegation of Robert Devine that he failed in his attention and devotion to duty was sustained. On the date of December 21, 2020, Robert Devine failed to demonstrate, quote, attention and devotion to duty when he engaged in Facebook Messenger communications with Sandra Birchmore while on duty. The content of the text messages was that he requested Birchmore to meet him at the Chateau restaurant, redacted. The communications indicated that Devine arrived at the Chateau restaurant and that Birchmore was on her way to meet him there. Investigative actions. On February 23rd, 2021, I opened a case file as a collection point for this case investigation. I queried all records pertaining to Sandra Birchmore within the department's in-house computer database known as IMC. After a review of all records, I administratively locked access to these records with exception to access by Chief McNamara, me, and Detective Sergeant O'Connor. I gave a verbal directive to Detective Sergeant O'Connor that if any records requests came in for Sandra Birchmore, that the chief or I were to be notified. On February 24th, 2021, this is the very next day, Detective Matthew Farwell was placed on paid administrative leave. I was assisted by Detective Sergeant O'Connor. At that time, Detective Farwell turned in his equipment and department property as ordered by the memo for administrative leave. On February 26, 2021, I took the IMC Access Control thumb drive of Matthew Farwell and had retired executive assistant Mary DeCastro verify that the thumb drive was in fact the IMC Access and Control drive. Ms. DeCastro verified that it was. The drive was kept in the box that is secured in my office. On March 2nd, 2021, I prepared an inventory of the property taken from Matthew Farwell and left the memo for you. On Monday, March 15th, 2021, I received communication redacted. He was sending documents that included letters from the victim, Miss Birchmore, and other communications that they were forwarding to me for the purpose of cooperating with this department's internal affairs investigation. On Tuesday, March 16th, 2021, I left a message for, and it's redacted. I spoke to redacted on Wednesday, March 17th. As an introduction, I discussed with redacted for blank understanding how the internal affairs process operates. They told me that redacted had shared 4 full file boxes of documents that were Miss Birchmore's property recovered from her apartment. Redacted turned those boxes over to the MSP. Lieutenant Fanning, here comes Fanning, and here enters Lieutenant Fanning, later shared with me some personal notes that he took from the boxes that he thought may be relevant to this case. I reviewed the documents, which were mainly handwritten notes to people with whom she had personal relationships. On Monday, April 26, 2021, I delivered Detective Farwell's department-issued cell phone to Trooper Kevin Tufts of the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office to be delivered to the investigation trooper Sergeant Fanning. This was shared in cooperation with their unattended death investigation. On Friday, July 30th, 2021, you and I met with the district attorney, the first assistant DA, Sergeant Fanning, Lieutenant Mattaliano, and Trooper Matthew Dunn of the Massachusetts State Police, and the rest of it's redacted. On Friday, September 3rd, 2021, after having previously received authorization from the town manager, I met with Captain retired Paul L. Italian. Mr. El Italian is a retired captain of the MSP and now works as an independent private investigator and consultant. I provided a brief overview of the Birchmore/Farwell matter. He signed a non-disclosure agreement at my request, and I provided him with copies of several documents. The reports of the MSP were provided along with several pages of notes and journals that were kept by Birchmore. On Thursday, September 30th, 2021, I met with Sergeant Fanning of the MSP ISU. I was given a thumb drive that contained evidence from the unattended death investigation of the victim, Sandra Birchmore. A file labeled, quote-unquote, evidence contained, redacted. Another file that was a PDF was titled, quote-unquote, Blacklight Case Birchmore. This file contained 50,000 pages of communications that were pulled from Birchmore's computer. The computer had been synced with her cell phone. The files were conversations, text messages, iMessages, and various forms of communication with her contacts. The document was challenging to review in that it was not in a chronological order and messages were duplicated. On Thursday, September 30th, 2021, I conducted a preliminary review of the thumb drive and observed many of the conversations redacted. I notified Chief McNamara and the town manager by email that I would be viewing the files of this nature for investigative purposes. On Tuesday, October 5th, 2021, I met with P.I. Italian, and he requested that I sign a document from his investigation service. The document stated that he was receiving a flash drive, redacted, and that the purpose of his viewing it would be for investigative purposes. The letter also indicated that the files would not be copied and would be returned to me upon completion of this investigation. I signed the document and took a copy for the case file. On Wednesday, October 6, 2021, I met Sergeant Fanning at the office of the DA, and I received from him Sandra Birchmore's MacBook Air. The laptop was placed into my case file for later review. On Thursday, November 4th, 2021, I met with P.I. Italian, and we conducted a strategic review of a thumb drive that contained a file named, quote-unquote, Blacklight Report 2021, 929, 22, 29, 52, end quote. This file was received from the MSP ISU and was the downloaded file from the laptop of Sandra Birchmore. The computer had been reportedly synchronized with her cell phone. During the review, we observed and discussed conversations between Matthew Farwell, William Farwell, redacted, and a recruiter from the Massachusetts Army National Guard who was believed to be Birchmore's recruiting officer. We identified conversations that would be of interest to the U.S. military. I wonder what those are. We also noted that there were photographs and videos that had been exchanged between Birchmore and William and Matthew Farwell. On Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, I reviewed all available files that had been kept archived in the department's dead record storage. These files were in a W.B. Mason box labeled, quote-unquote, Explorers, and had been placed there by me after I moved into my office in 2017. Previous to this, the files had been kept in the office that I currently occupy by the former deputy chief and now Officer Robert Devine. Devine had been in charge of the Stoughton Police Explorers program in 2002 until approximately 2014. Among the students of the earlier classes were Matthew and William Farwell and later Sandra Birchmore. I located paperwork that had these names on it, as well as class syllabi and other related documents that could be further used through the course of this investigation. On Wednesday, November 10th, 2021, I continued a review of all related documents as referenced on November 9th. Let's see if we can skip some of this stuff. Okay. On Tuesday, December 7th, I met and conferred with redacted, served him notice that the redacted would be a witness in this case. I discussed in limited scope the case without citing names of involved or personnel and spoke in general terms. I advised him that a subject of this investigation has procedural due process rights and that I am also bound by the confidentiality of the policy concerning internal affairs. I discussed that redacted has direct knowledge of the relevant parts of this investigation and that he is a material witness. I discussed that he would be allowed to bring a representative with him for the witness interview. Redacted inquired if he should place redacted on administrative leave, and I told him that in my opinion, no, he should not do that. I also advised him that if during the course of the investigation redacted were to turn from a witness to a subject for any reason, that I would inform redacted as to the change in the scope. Redacted inquired about knowing in the future of the broader scope of this investigation. I responded that given the most recent changes with police reform and post, that he would likely be able to receive an unredacted copy of the investigative report when it is complete. I wish we had that. On Thursday, December 9th, 2021, PI El Italien and I met and continued this investigation. On several dates throughout this investigation, he and I had ongoing discussions by cell phone and in person pertaining to the documents related to this case. Collectively, we performed word searches of the PDF that I had received from the MSP. Specifically, the quote-unquote blacklight report of communications that the victim, Sandra Birchmore, had with her contacts dating back to 2019. Okay. Between January 10th and 11th, I made contact with Detective Lieutenant Kenneth Hefferman of the MSP Crime Scene Services Division. I requested a forensic analysis of the couch that is located in the redacted. After Detective Lieutenant received authorization to assist with this administrative investigation through his chain of command, we arranged for the unit to respond on Friday, January 14th at 1000 hours. PIA El Italien was also authorized to attend and participate. On Friday, January 14th, I met with PIA Italien Detective Lieutenant Kenneth Hefferman of the MSP Crime Lab and forensics technician Jennifer Preissig. On Wednesday, February 9th, 2022, investigator El Italien and I met with redacted at the Abington Town Hall in a previously reserved conference room. Present with him was his redacted. On Thursday, February 17th, I had a discussion with Patrolmen's Union President Barber pertaining to notification of an interview with Officer Matthew Farwell. On Friday, February 18th, President Barber agreed to accept Farwell's interview notice, and he was to serve him the notice. I received an email from attorney Patrick Hanley, who represents Matthew Farwell. Between the dates of February 22nd and March 11th, through a series of phone calls and emails between attorney Hanley and myself, and at some points through town council Matthew Farwell resigned from his employment with the town effective April 1. A previous communication from his attorney indicated that Matthew Farwell would not be participating in an interview in this matter. Upon receipt of the resignation letter, Chief McNamara had the resignation stamped by the town clerk, Stephanie Carrera, as official receipt by the town on March 11th. An interview was drafted. Had Matthew Farwell been interviewed, he would have been asked a series of questions as detailed in Exhibit 2. On or about March 28th, after some previous discussions between myself, P.I. L'Italien, and Chief McNamara, it was decided that I would not participate in the interview or notice of interview of Officer Devine. P.I. L'Italien brought the assistance of P.I. Robert Fries to assist in the interview of Devine. I wonder why. Officer William Farwell was served notice that he was under investigation. William Farwell was at the time on military leave detailed to his MA Army National Guard unit and had been deployed since for several months. His anticipated return to full duty date was May through July 2022. On Thursday, March 31st, I made contact with Redacted in an attempt to get a contact number for Redacted. I later received a call back from Redacted and Redacted's cell phone number to me. I then made contact with Redacted by cell phone. We spoke briefly and arranged to meet for an interview early next week. He was at a work event and requested that we communicate via to her Redacted home as she works from home. On April 4th, 2022, it was determined based on a review of some of the evidence that P.I. L'Italien and I obtained that Officer Devine should be placed on paid administrative leave. A discussion was held with TM Robin Grimm, Chief McNamara, and myself in the town manager's office on Monday the 4th. I provided an investigative update per the Stoughton Police Department Internal Affairs Policy. Relevant to the decision to place Officer Devine on paid leave was evidence received during the investigation showing that, and then that's all redacted. It was decided that on the basis of the information available, that the interests of the department and the town would be best protected by placing the officer on paid administrative leave. Officer Devine was served a notice of this at 15:45 hours and served a notice of investigative interview that would be conducted by P.I. L'Italien. Further discussion was held about the role of Officer William Farwell. I reported that it was believed and evidence showed that Officer William Farwell had frequent contact. Redacted. A determination was made to place William Farwell on paid administrative leave. Chief McNamara called Farwell by phone on April 12th, and he later reported to the station. I assisted in the discussion and retrieved his department equipment. Farwell was present with the union president, Barber. Then it says, further discussion was held about the role of Officer William Farwell. I reported that it was believed and evidence showed that Officer William Farwell had frequent contact. Redacted. A determination was made to place him on paid administrative leave. On Thursday, April 7th, I received a text message from Redacted. The text was a screenshot of the comment section of a Facebook post commenting on the recent Boston Globe article on the resignation of Matthew Farwell and Redacted of Sandra Birchmore. The post was by a person using a screen name of Redacted. The post alleged that Birchmore's friends had been contacted by members of the SPD after her death and that the friends were threatened and called liars. Subsequent to this, I had a discussion with MSP Lieutenant Fanning. We spoke about the possible implications possible implications of MGL Chapter 268, known as the Witness Intimidation Statute. We resolved that should any witnesses describe a violation of the statute, that I would inform Lieutenant Fanning and reevaluate. Okay. Let me see if any of these exhibits are in here. Okay, it goes through all the interviews, which I want to go through, definitely. I don't see any exhibits, though. But wait, there's more. Wow. Okay. Sorry. Let's go back up where I can't remember where I was now. Um, okay. On Thursday, April 14th, I was contacted by Lieutenant Fanning of the MSP. He informed me that a redacted, identified as redacted, had called the MSP duty office. When Lieutenant Fanning returned the call, redacted reported that redacted had been a police explorer in the earlier years of the program, and described that redacted had observed inappropriate behavior by Divine and the Farwell brothers while they served as instructors in the program. Redacted indicated that there had been some hugging, kissing, and inappropriate contact in a closet. Redacted also stated that there were suggestive statements to the effect of, quote, come back and see me after you turn 18, end quote, and other such activity that suggested redacted. Lieutenant Fanning was to brief the ADA in charge of sexual assaults on the matter and get back to me as to a statute of redacted. On Monday, May 2nd, I received a name and contact number from Chief McNamara for Redacted, who identified herself as Redacted. Redacted reported that Redacted had an incident with Matthew Farwell in August of 2021 and that the matter may have involved a crime on the part of Matthew Farwell. I called Redacted's cell phone number. Redacted returned my call on the same afternoon, and we spoke on a recorded line. Redacted reported the following as described below, and then that's all redacted. I stopped the interview and told Redacted that I would be reaching out to the Massachusetts State Police and that either I or the MSP would be getting back to her with the next steps. The recording was downloaded and saved to a thumb drive. I reached Lieutenant Fanning and he was briefed. He called me back after consulting with his chain of command and told me that Trooper Kathleen Prince would be reaching out to me to follow up on this allegation. I received a call from Trooper Prince on Tuesday, May 3rd about this allegation. I hand delivered an information packet to Trooper Prince at the Canton office of the NCDA. On Tuesday, May 17th, I was updated by Trooper Prince that she has not successfully made contact with Redacted to arrange an interview. Trooper Prince indicated that when she contacted Redacted, the call goes directly to voicemail. On Tuesday, May 17th, I met with Lieutenant Fanning and an associate of PI Italian named Michael Bates. Mr. Bates owns a consulting company and specializes in the forensics of internet technology. Mr. Bates, along with PI Italian and PI Fries, met at the MPTC in Randolph on Tuesday, May 17th for strategy and planning discussions. While reviewing with Lieutenant Fanning the contents of Sandra Birchmore's laptop, we discovered a conversation thread that was contained in the Facebook Messenger files. The contact appeared to be either a blocked or anonymous Facebook user. Based on the content and context of the conversation, the user appears to be Officer Robert Devine. The person is an attorney and employee of the Stoughton Police Department and discusses, among other things, meeting with Sandra Birchmore while on duty in a patrol car. So yeah, Robert Devine is now an attorney. I forgot to tell you that. I think he should lose his bar also. The conversation discusses meeting locations in Stoughton. Sandra also discusses Redacted with the Facebook user who is believed to be Divine. After further investigation, the Facebook user was identified as, quote, Marty Riggs, end quote. The entire exchange is detailed in Exhibit 30. On Thursday, June 2nd, I met with Redacted, spoke with her briefly, and inquired about digital imagery of Sandra Birchmore's apartment during the 2 months that she was a tenant. I also asked about payment records that she may have had. She looked up what Sandra had on file for her. I provided PIL Italian with 4 investigative files. He was to conduct interviews of those individuals. I met with Lieutenant Fanning and received a 64 gigabyte thumb drive of the data pulled from Sandra Birchmore's 2 cell phones. The format was in Cellbrite Reader and is a more legible and delineated format. The thumb drive was passed on to PI El Italian and was given to PI Michael Bates for further analysis. So Michael Bates, okay, never mind. I requested a CJIS offline search of any and all CJIS users within the Commonwealth that may have queried Sandra Birchmore or her vehicle. On Tuesday, June 9th, PIs El Italian and Fries met with Redacted at her home. The interview had been previously arranged to take place at 5:30 p.m. On Thursday, June 9th, I asked Union President Barber to serve a notice to William Farwell. The following day, I received a confirmation and a request that the date of the interview be pushed back by a week. On behalf of the town, I honored the request. On Tuesday, June 14th, President Barber came to my office indicating that Farwell had previously spoke to him about his interpretation of the USSERA Act and that he had located a staff investigator from the USDOL. He provided me with the contact information and asked that I contact the investigator, William Coughlin. On Friday, June 10th, I received a response to my offline search request. Responses would be limited to Stoughton CJIS user data only, per CJIS policy. I discussed with the CJIS director a process for obtaining statewide information. I then submitted a second request for an offline search for all queries of CJIS users Matthew Farwell, William Farwell, and Robert Devine. On Tuesday, June 14th, I sorted previously held files from the Police Explorers program and took only those files and documents with investigative relevance. All old files were archived in the dead records room in the basement and marked Police Explorers old and taped shut in the event that a future need arises for further review of these files. On Thursday, June 23rd, after discovering that William Farwell had violated the CJIS policy and user agreement by querying his own personal data on an intermittent basis for the entire time he was a user, I made contact with SSRA Kate Kelly of the FBI and asked that she query William Farwell's personal data through their database. A query was made and no outstanding or archived records were located. We discussed the possibility of a VICAP query at a later date, as in my opinion, a CJIS authorized user performing multiple queries of themselves is highly suspect and unusual. The query files were also shared by PI El Italian to be incorporated into the interview with William Farwell. So, we made it through half of the report, and tomorrow evening or tomorrow afternoon I will come back and finish the other half. I can't wait to get to the actual interviews that they conducted with Robert Devine. They look pretty interesting, and he looks like a dirtbag POS. In fact, the investigator even has a few choice words to say about Robert Devine in his summary. So we'll get to that tomorrow. So I appreciate you joining me. I find this very interesting, and you could write a whole set of books on the shit going on in Massachusetts It's just crazy. They they keep us busy themselves. I mean, you don't have to look at any other states to stay busy with all the crap going on there. But yeah, the, tomorrow Alvin Campbell's trial is set to start. He is the brother of the Attorney General of Massachusetts, who is charged with multiple counts of rape, SA, kidnapping, etc. And since the year of since they know of 2016, and I'm sure it goes way back before that, because they don't just start. You don't just start doing that kind of thing in your 30s and 40s. Um, you have to. I mean, you've got to have some kind of tendency to do that kind of thing your whole adult life, I would think, if not sooner. So I don't know if more victims will come out of the woodwork now that he's being held accountable, but it'll be interesting to see. And I know that Melanie Little is covering that trial, so be sure to tune in with her. She will be streaming it. I cannot because I work night shift and I work 2 shifts this week, and that would be right in the middle of the trial because I'm sure it's going to go longer than 2 days. So I don't want to start it and not be able to finish it. So I will be following along with Melanie also. So anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow. Ciao for now. Bye.